Welcome back to Calligraphy Biz Corner. I'm your host, Xiao Chen. We haven't had a guest interview for the show in like a year, way too long, and so I really couldn't wait to release this episode with Kristine of Kristine P Calligraphy. Kristine's story really showcases how our businesses can change so much over the years based on our interests, our physical well being, and other priorities in our lives. And part of what I love so much about entrepreneurship is that it's not a linear journey, which is probably the reason why I've been at it so long, because I get to decide what to work on and pursue what's interesting to me. But at the same time, when we're in the middle of some of those pivots and changes, it's really easy to feel imposter syndrome, get overwhelmed, or even want to give up. And that's what happened to Kristine in 2025. She was running a digital template shop when she realized that her true passion was designing and creating large scale signage and installs for weddings, a total 180 from the template shop. But before shutting down her business, she decided to join my CEO partner one on one coaching program. And over 12 weeks, we worked closely to change her business model, her positioning, her clientele to be that full service signage business that she wanted, leading her to book out this year, 2026, with those types of clients. It's crazy how much she's accomplished in the past year, all while working her full time job as well. And in this interview, you'll get to hear how Kristine did it. We'll talk about what we did during the coaching program and what made the biggest impact when she was stepping into this new version of her business. I'm really glad that Kristine followed her passion and didn't give up because her work is so stunning, and what a gift that the world gets to experience it. Make sure to follow her on Instagram at Kristine P Calligraphy. And if you're getting married in Northern California in 2027 and you're looking for bespoke large scale signage and day of details that focus on your love story while incorporating Kristine's unique calligraphy style, her books are now open, so send in your inquiry. Let's jump into her interview. Welcome, Kristine. I am so excited to have you on Calligraphy Biz Corner today. Just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in your business today and what your primary services are and who you serve?
Yeah, so I am a wedding calligrapher and I specialize in large scale signage for weddings and wedding related events. I am full service based. So when couples come to me from the stage to the booking process, all the way to production and day of wedding, I handle everything with them. I walk them through everything. My services are really for couples that are looking for large scale signage and day of details, and that is more tied to their love story. And of course, adding that calligraphy piece to it. I like to emphasize that a lot with my couples. They can truly say that their wedding signage is unique to them because I hand letter that calligraphy piece adds that bespoke piece to their signage and to their day.
Yeah, I just love checking out your Instagram, all those beautiful installs and walls that you build, and every single one is so different and unique, right?
Yeah.
Do they usually come to you with a vision, or do you kind of take their ideas and come up with something in return?
I do well, a little bit of both, yeah. So during the inquiry process, I asked them to provide me like a mood board of some sort, and when we have a discovery call, I try and pull in their inspirations, and that helps me put together a proposal that will put basically all their visions together, and it also helps them a lot, at least from what I hear from the couples that visually seeing all of their pieces in one board gives them a better understanding or idea of what they actually wanted and what they may not want. So yeah.
So true. I find it so much easier for people to react to something than to try to describe your vision where you could both be describing and saying the same words, but the picture that's coming into your head looks totally different. And so it's so much easier to look at something together.
That happens a lot more than I realize now that happens a lot more than it doesn't. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, this episode is all about talking about like pivots and shifts and transitions that we make in our business journey. And you've been in business for 8 years. And so you've seen kind of a number of like twists and turns before your business became what it is today. So I thought we could back up and start from the beginning and kind of give us like just a quick summary of what did your business look like when you first started? What kind of things were you doing? And then walk us through the evolution of like how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Oh man, I lots of micro pivots, lots of shifts throughout those 8 years. But I started calligraphy as a hobby in 2017, and 2018 was when it actually became a side hustle. I started doing practice videos, and those practice videos kind of turned into paid personalizations. And the more and more I posted them, more people started reaching out. And so I started with chalkboard signs. And looking back, I feel like with a lot of the calligraphers that started calligraphy with me, we all started with those chalkboard signs. I would get them from
Yeah.
my, and then I would use chalk pens, and I thought those were like the coolest things. And so that was one of the first materials that I started with. I did my first wedding during that year, and then more and more requests started happening for like ornaments and doormats, basically
Mm.
anything that had surface. I
That
would
you anything you could personalize. Yeah. Very
Yes.
cool.
Man, that was a really fun experiment phase in my business. And then leading to 2019 and 2020, I did my second wedding and I started experimenting on acrylics and
Mhm.
mirrors. And I didn't realize paint pens were a thing. And I was so obsessed with how smooth my calligraphy could look. It didn't at first, but the smooth it looked and those different surfaces. And so I started getting really obsessed with how all of that looked and ended up deciding to focus on weddings because more and more requests are coming in for acrylic. So I did different designs and calligraphy styles too. I was experimenting with my calligraphy styles. And then 2021 was when I decided like, okay, this is going somewhere. And that's when I ended up taking the pro wedding calligrapher course that
Oh
just
yeah,
gave
that's right.
it gave me the foundation of what it actually meant to run a business. And that was, I think, the intimidating part of why it took some time for me to turn it from a side hustle to like a full blown like this is what it truly is to run a business.
And
And
I think for our listeners too, you are actually still technically running this on the side of your 9 to 5 too,
yeah,
right? So, so you've been
I,
growing this business that's now like booming and you're like fully booked on top of your 9 to 5 and managing all of that.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I've been like it's almost like I well, let me back up. Back then, I was not only doing just my 9 to 5, I was also a full-time college student. So it
Oh
was,
my
and
gosh.
I always said that I was full-time in business because it really was a full-time, an additional full-time job. And so now that it's just my full-time job and then my full-time calligraphy
So you have
business.
two full-time, yeah. Two full-time gigs.
Way, but it's still a lot because now I have other things that I need to balance. And now I like to say I'm a full-time bride too, because I'm planning for my wedding this year. And so that takes a lot. So it was
Mhm.
definitely a lot of shifts and pivots in the last few years. Yeah.
Okay, so 2021, you took the Pro Wedding Calligrapher course, and it kind of really put you in the mindset of like, this is a real business. I'm really transitioning from kind of like doing it as a hobby, doing things for maybe like friends or friends of friends, into expanding as a business. How did things shift from there?
Within that year, I was very focused on weddings. I did about like 15 weddings by the end of that year and like some minor projects. The following year, I started doing more and more weddings as well. And later that year, I started feeling hand pains and
Mm.
body aches that I
Oh my
couldn't.
gosh, this overuse. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
in 2022 that this
yeah.
was happening.
2022 and in 2023 I started experiencing more pain, like it wasn't going away. And I
Okay.
is because I was starting to work with larger pieces like big mirrors and stuff. I was in weird little positions and sometimes you look at it and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a calligrapher. I just get to like sit on a table and write pretty letters and stuff." But that wasn't the case for me. I was in all sorts of different positions and I was in a
Yeah.
tiny studio apartment like doing all of those things. And so my body definitely took a toll. And in 2023, I literally went from like 30 weddings to I think I did 2 weddings that year. It was also around the time where my fiance and I purchased a home, and so there was a new transition, a new pivot in our personal life that affected my business to where I wasn't as active on social media. I wasn't as active with clients or trying to even get clients. I started thinking like, "Oh, is this the end of my business?" Like not realizing like, "Oh, you haven't really been active and you had all these
Mhm.
that you weren't doing in your business." So like, yeah, that's why you're not getting any leads. But I decided just in a spur of the moment that I got into or I was looking through Instagram and digital marketing was like a big thing. And that's when I thought, "Oh, maybe templates, like digital wedding templates with my calligraphy may be the way to go." So that was, I think, like a really big pivot in my business.
Mhm.
Such a big change from
Yeah.
actually doing the calligraphy and being service based to now basically making it more passive and selling these templates online to where I didn't really talk to couples. They just kind of looked at what I had on my website, and if they liked the template, they download it, they purchase it and download it.
Right.
Yeah.
More product based. You were basically service based before, more high touch, you're working directly with people, moving
Yeah.
into more of a product based transactional, like e-commerce type of model,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I thought, you know what? Maybe down the line, this was going to be something that I could get more time back, but it didn't really last that long. I actually don't remember how long it lasted, but I remember the following year or maybe later that year, I started thinking, I was like, that's when I started thinking, "Oh, this my business may not last. I may have to close down because I sold one template."
And I mean, did you like the process of moving into a template shop, creating digital templates for people?
I did at one point because I fixate on a lot of things sometimes, and so I have these tiny bursts of moments in just my daily life where I fixate. So like I was enjoying those, and I was creating and making all these different templates, this different designs. I was doing mock-ups and stuff to upload to my website, but after all of that pre-planning, I was almost bored. I was almost
Mm.
like, what do I do now? Aside from talk about my new template show.
Hmm. Or
So
like
it,
creating more and more designs, right? So that people can like find exactly what they're looking for. I think like for me personally, the reason why I like being a service-based business or working more one-on-one with couples is that I get a lot of inspiration from them too. Like I see what their whole vision is and I'm like, "Oh, this is how I could fit into it," or maybe like this material is speaking to me or whatever. And so, I mean, that's personally, I feel like if I were sitting in a vacuum trying to create all these designs, that would be difficult for me.
yeah, at one point I felt like I was stuck creatively, which is weird because, for templates, when you're creating different things, it's like at least for me, I was constantly trying to create all these new designs, but I just felt
Mhm.
stuck. And even looking
Mhm.
at inspiration, like if I were to go on Pinterest or like social media,
Mhm.
I couldn't pull any design inspirations from. And I think this was a time where I started to see more large scale signage or like those big seating charts that I was just in so much awe when I
Mhm.
and I was trying to pull some inspo, but for the most part it was hard to do that at a template.
Template that someone can print. Yeah, right. There's also a limit to like how big they can necessarily blow something up too. So,
Right. And the back end of things of like the customer support, like what if it doesn't print out? well. Like you can plan it all out. You could list everything of all the different steps that you could take with it. But if you take it to a different print shop or I don't know, maybe a
Mhm.
different Stables or whatever company that does,
Right.
it's like maybe it's different. Their printer is different. You never really know.
That's
So
true.
that also was a difficult piece for me to try and anticipate as I was doing
Mm.
prep for it.
Yeah, and almost just like letting go of what the end product is going to look like because truly you have no control once they download the file. So,
Yours every time.
yeah, makes sense. What I love about hearing your journey up to this point, so we're kind of in 2023, 2024 at this point, is that you really followed what you were curious about. You followed your curiosity and your exploration, right? Like you started with chalkboard signs, you moved into acrylic and really fell in love with that. And then the templates makes a lot of sense because you were experiencing some like physical pain. And so it sounds like exactly what you needed at that time is to actually take a break from using your hands, right? And
Right.
so were you able to kind of get better as well during that time?
Yeah, I was. It didn't hurt as much anymore. And even to this day, it's just like it's pretty much back to normal.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that.
And but which is really weird too, because I feel like I'm doing more calligraphy now. Well, especially like
I'm
for my wedding and stuff, but it was as if nothing happened. So I don't know, maybe it was the universe at that time telling me like, hey, we're about to go through something. Let me just make it dramatic and make you go through all these steps to make you realize like, okay, maybe this is a time where we're gonna shift.
And you're probably also you are a different business owner than you were back then. You're charging higher prices, which means you don't have to take on as many clients. And so you're not doing as high a volume of work. Like there's a number of things as we build our business, we learn to make it more sustainable for ourselves because like we have to preserve our bodies, our hands. Like I got a massage this week and I was literally thinking, I need to figure out if this can be a tax write-off because the
Yes.
reason I feel so stiff today is because I worked a 2-day conference, like live event. So this is like directly tied to my business, right? But I
Yes.
mean, truly, like it can be very taxing on our bodies. And so it is important to like give ourselves space and take breaks and like not overbook ourselves, as it's so easy to just always want more, more, more in our business sometimes.
Yeah, I remember when I was still starting out, that's all to me, I thought having all of these couples, all these orders was like the thing to do, like the go, go, go. But it really does take a toll on your body and you don't realize it until you're
Mhm.
full of it and you start thinking like, oh my gosh, is this gonna be for the rest of my business career? Like where can I find flexibility in this? And I was also, like starting into my post college life and I was thinking of like when we get married or when we have kids and stuff like that, is this going to be an everyday thing where I'm crouched down on the floor and my kids are running around in the background? To me, it wasn't sustainable looking back now where I am in my business. And so I think having that transition was so good for me because it gave me time to think and not having customers or couples during the template phase of
Mhm.
my
Mhm. Yeah.
about like, oh, what do I really want, in my business? It's either I keep going or I just stop my business entirely. And I didn't want to give up. At one point I
Yeah.
did want to
Yeah. No, like sometimes like these twists and turns in our business journeys often are exactly what we need, you know? But
100%.
okay, so let's pick things up from there. This was in 2025, and this
Mhm.
is actually where I kind of entered the picture. You were in my CEO partner coaching program, and that's when we started working together. And I remember this phase where you were in the template phase, but wanting a totally different business. I remember you telling me that you love these big installs, like you said, like just in awe, like enamored by these installations. And so you wanted to make another pretty big change from doing digital templates that people can purchase themselves to building these like really elaborate and unique designs that you go on site to install for people. You touched a little bit on this already, but like Tell our listeners a little bit about like how you were feeling at that time when we started working together about your business.
I remember that I felt really discouraged during that time because I didn't know where I wanted my business to go. I talked to my fiance at that time, and then he was telling me like, what do you truly want? Like if you had a dream calligraphy business, what do you want from that? Say you make it. What do you imagine? And I said I wanted to do big signage. I wanted a warehouse. I wanted a team to help me. And I thought about my dad because he's all his life he's a mason, and so he likes building things. And I
Cool.
him and I think that's part of the reason why I was really interested in large signage to begin with, because of the building piece of it. Thought about him, and I went down the rabbit hole of like it could be a family business, it could be all of these
Oh my
different
gosh, I love this.
that made me so happy. I was like,
Yeah.
we were talking about it. Oh, I don't even know for how long, but that made me realize that I wanted to do large signage. And I think the end of that year, that's when I purchased my laser. It's like,
Mhm.
that's a big pivot. And so
Mhm.
by 2025, when you and I started talking about the mentorship program, I felt like that was like a big change. And I finally started feeling more creative, and the different designs that I started seeing, or the inspo that I started seeing on social media, I'm like, yeah, I can make that. I can do that. Like, what are the logistics that come into that? And that's when you kind of helped me bring out all of the little pieces that needed to get to that one big piece. And I remember us talking about like the big picture, and I remember you telling me to just kind of break it down piece by piece. And those were the things
Mhm.
that I didn't even realize that there were smaller pieces that I needed before we got to those big steps. Because in my head, I was,
Mm.
yeah, we're doing big signage, logistics,
Yeah,
out. Sure.
that's step one, big signage, right? Right, right, yes. That's right.
Oh man, but that after and going through the program, I realized I was like, oh, okay. The minor things, the tiny little steps, that's what's led me to where I am now.
Mm.
I remember looking back at our roadmap and seeing like, yeah, I did do all of these little things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's where we started with everything, was just like coming up with the 3-month roadmap and really just focusing on the next 3 months of like what does it mean to transition into this large signage space. Okay, I remember some of the things we did, but what were the things that stood out to you that I feel like really made an impact in making this shift?
Let's see. Weirdly enough, when I was starting to create the brochures, like the service guides and stuff, I actually had completely forgotten about the vendor list that I had originally from the
Mhm.
programming part.
Mhm.
And when I started creating a brochure, I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with this? Like, I'm gonna put it on Instagram and stuff. And to me, at that time, I didn't realize how impactful emails were still.
Yeah. The
And
outreach, right? Yep. Mhm.
the outreach was, I think, the biggest impact for me, because
Right.
as soon as I started, and I didn't just send it out to like my current vendor list, I updated that list. Um,
Yeah.
did more vendors,
With
added
people you didn't know yet, right? Like people you ideally wanted to work with. Yeah.
plans.
Mhm.
I followed them on Instagram. I joined Facebook groups to let people know, like in my local area, like, hey, if you guys are
Mhm.
interested in large scale signage, like this is what I do. I'm like happy to talk about it with you and stuff like that. So I joined those groups, and what I found was the email reaching out to these planners
Mm.
actually got me more leads. And even
Yes.
old planners who were like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember working with you. Do have a wet,
Yes.
and I have a couple looking for something like this specifically, so let's chat. So at first I was like, I don't know if emails, because to me it was like intimidating because it felt like a cold call.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And so when I was receiving responses, I was like, oh, it's
Mhm.
okay, like people actually can see that I exist outside of social media, or they realize that, oh, there's this vendor that is here in my local area that is literally what my couples are looking for. And I remember you telling me that it's like I'm doing the work for them by basically presenting myself like, hey, I know you were probably going to be looking for a signage vendor anyway. I'm here in your area.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, like, okay, so you've heard me say this, obviously, but I feel like I shout this from the rooftops. Is like, if you are talking to a planner, part of their job is actually to find vendors like us. And so when we just show up in their inbox, doesn't it make their job so much easier than having to like go out there and Google for exactly who they're looking for, who's probably gonna be you?
Right.
So but yeah, I think this is the thing about outreach is like our brains, it's so easy for our brains to go straight to like, what if they don't like it? What if I get rejected? And we don't often think about like, what is on the other side of that? What's the potential that could happen? What are the opportunities that could be on the other side of this outreach instead of potential rejection? And in all the time that I've been doing this, either for my own business or with like clients, I mean, honestly, like 100% of the time, I hear, wow, I got so many more positive responses. I would say, like, there have been a few cases where someone said, like, oh, no, we're not looking for like a vendor to add to our preferred list right now, or something like that. But most of the time, it's something positive. Oftentimes, whatever those fears are, around outreach don't materialize. And so I'm so glad that you did this and put yourself out there because, like you said, this was so impactful. And I think before we even got to the point of talking about your business, there were some things we figured out in the background too. Like one of the things we talked about was creating pieces of work to showcase what you wanted to do because you didn't really have an example of the large scale signage yet at that point, right? And I remember you creating this really beautiful welcome sign that had like a light fixture attached to it.
Yeah, I remember. I gets That was one of the things that like logistically didn't click in my head when I thought, oh yeah, large scale signage, people are just gonna book you. But if you don't
Hmm.
have anything to show for it, then how are they gonna know that that's what you do? And so
Right.
when I started building this, I was like, oh, I posted it on Instagram and people were like, "Oh, she did this. Like this is what she actually does." And so it started to make sense and it got me a chance to kind of experiment a little bit more with my laser too because
Totally.
it was that was a big investment that I had no
Mhm.
idea how to use. And I just kind of,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I have a laser. Cool. I'm going to use it. Do I know how to use it? No. So
Right.
that was the perfect opportunity for me to kind of dip my toes in what it could really mean to build these large signage. And I remember actually marking the time of how long it was going to take to build these just so that I have
Mhm.
an idea of like
Yes.
getting down the end too. So that was one of the things that we did, or at least
Yes.
you suggested for me to do to do some time marks. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the portfolio piece served a couple purposes. It's like we were just saying, people are so visual. It's much easier for them to see something and be like, oh, I like this style or something like this than trying to imagine it in their head. And also is like proof that, like you said, you can do it. And then also, like, from a learning standpoint, you don't want the first time that you use your laser to be for a big client, right? Like, you want to
right,
do the trial and error on your own at home when there's like the stakes are really low. You have nothing to lose. It's all about that learning and exploration, not the pressure and the timelines of like having a real wedding around the corner. So I think what was great about that I learned from this process too was that you actually didn't have to create a lot of portfolio pieces. You really created that one was like the main one you did, right? And then we got that like one pager, that brochure together, and you put that picture on there. There was a little bit of information about you, and then you just started telling people about your business. And you didn't need to have an example of like everything you could create for people to book you for things that they didn't see, if that makes sense. Like they
right.
just needed confidence that you could create something that they didn't see, right? And I think that came down to a lot of probably the work we did in talking about what your call process was going to be, what your sales process was going to look like with your clients, like how you were going to create mock-ups and designs. I remember talking a little bit about that too, is like figuring out how to actually build something that's bigger and create a mock-up for that, right?
I'm starting to remember now with like those tiny little steps of, am I going to be using like Canva to do these mock-up, or
Right. Yes.
proposal process going to look like?
Yep.
When they book, like what is the actual process? How do I bring the couple in to see what their signs are going to look like? How do I assure them? Like all these questions started coming up. But
Yes.
like I didn't have to think about those until maybe a little bit later, but the outreach really did help because now it's like, okay, it's go time. Like you put yourself out there. Now
Now
you
people can book you.
it was a really great experience thinking back on how I did it because I felt like it happened so fast.
Yeah, totally did. I remember, I mean, when we were still in the program together, and this is a 12-week program, you were already like, I'm booking the clients that I want to be booking already. And like
Yeah.
within 6 months, you were delivering on these like projects that you had only imagined at the beginning of the year. It was incredibly fast turnaround. And I think too, what was really successful in that was that we would break down the steps, like you said, we would really break it down into small pieces. And then we would decide what to do next, and you would go and do them. And I think that is huge, is like the follow through, right? Like we can have all the plans in the world, we can have all the roadmaps, but if the action and the follow through isn't happening, then they're just going to sit in the spreadsheet.
Yes.
But like you made it happen, and so like kudos to you to actually, like you said, putting yourself out there, putting the brochures together, talking to the people, having the conversations, and that's how you learned a lot too and iterated on what that process looked like. Because every time you had a conversation, you kind of figured out, okay, this worked well or this didn't. I want to try something different next time, and that's all it is in our business. Is like constant iterating, right?
And I think I remember talking about the accountability piece of it for me too, because
Mhm.
I, f- for me as a, this is my personal experience, but like sometimes it can get really lonely being a business owner because you want to do
Yes.
all these things, you're planning all of this stuff, and then sometimes it's just like, oh, you get way into your head about like all these what ifs, but having someone to talk to and telling
Mhm.
you like, these are your steps, and then being accountable for what you need to get done, and then actually the follow through piece, because a lot of the things that I planned back then, what makes my business a little bit different now is the follow through. I would just push Back then I would just push some things off to the side, like the little things,
Yeah.
what we talked about earlier. And I was like, no, I don't need to do a brochure. I don't need to update my website and the copy and the pictures. Like, it's fine the way it is, But if I
Mhm.
wanted to make this business expand and grow, like I had to do those minor, tiny little details. And the accountability piece really helped me because I had someone to support me on the back end and was was there to go through my lists and say like,
Yeah.
it's going, and
Yeah.
that's why I was there, because I knew that I needed someone to kind of push me to do the little things. And now I have this incredible business that I just truly love now.
Aw, that makes me so happy.
I just I just want to let you know that having someone being there and seeing your every step and pushing you makes a big difference in your business. Like you don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah,
Just
every Monday I'm gonna be like, so what we working on this week? Like when I work on a project with someone else too, I feel like a level of accountability to them as well. Yeah, and then I would say too, being able to talk through things and like bounce ideas and work through things together so that you're not stuck. I think that's the other thing that's hard for people is when they work on their business and they know what they want to do next, but they might not know how or they get stuck on it. Like I remember one of the pieces we were talking through was like pricing. And I
Mhm.
think I can't remember if you had a minimum at that point, but like we definitely needed to set a new minimum because we were offering totally different services now.
Yeah.
And so we really had to talk through like what that looked like and really what everything that entails in a large build because there's so much more when it also incorporates on-site installation too, right? And then strike at the end of the night. There's all these things that you weren't doing before that needed to be taken account into pricing to again make this a sustainable business and priced in a way that you weren't having to like work every single weekend or have double header weddings, every week.
Right. Right. And when we were thinking about those prices, I was like, I remember you gave me a number. Like, that's like big. But then going through the price book, I see like visually, yes, that it is a big price, but you have to consider all of these tiny things, or not tiny, but
Yes. I remember we listed out, yeah, all the factors that went into it.
blown, because I get again, I was like, one big step. I'm doing large signage. I wasn't thinking of tiny things. And so when we broke it down, I had more clarity on how much I needed to price certain things. And at one point, I remember last year, I was like, oh, maybe I do need to raise my minimum, because it's starting to the demand is starting to get really high, and we need to make adjustments. And the cost of materials have
That's
changed.
right. Yeah. I remember like wood started getting more expensive or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I had to do some back end research. I had started listening to like economic podcasts or
Oh my
something.
gosh, amazing.
No, okay. I assume that because wherever a state of the economy is, like materials and cost of goods are gonna go up. And so I
And the tariffs. Oh my gosh, yeah.
had to consider that in my business. And I walked into Lowe's one day and I was like, oh, it's not as full as I had originally seen it like a month ago, or stuff like
Oh, oh my gosh,
there.
yeah, shortages.
Yeah, I really had to consider all of these different things that you normally wouldn't think about when you're seeing a wedding signage. And so the price factors into all of that, and your decisions factor into all of that. So
Mhm.
it's one of the surprising things that I learned as I progressed
Yeah.
my business.
I mean, I feel like hearing you talk about your business today, and it's been about a year since we worked together, just like gives me goosebumps because you're such a different business owner, right? Like, you really
Di-
are like just the leader of your business. You sound so confident. You know exactly what you're doing. You're an expert, even though you've only been doing the large signage for about a year or less. Like, it's
Yeah.
just incredible how much you've grown.
Yeah, remember how I wasn't as confident when I first talked to couples booking me last year, and I would stutter. I would think about like, oh my gosh, if they ask me all these different questions, like, am I gonna know the answer to it, and stuff like that. But now I have an understanding. I have more clarity of what I can offer them, and it's also gotten to the point where I know that I can't be the wedding signage vendor they're looking for. So I would refer them to other amazing calligrapher artists, or wedding vendors that could provide them the exact service that they're looking for. And so that clarity has helped me a little bit more confidence. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still those days where I'm like imposter syndrome is just taking over. But for the most part, I feel like I have that clarity, and knowing that exactly what my business or what I can provide for the couples and the services that I provide. And it's a big change from how I was started my business, or even when I first started large signage.
Yeah. And that does make such a difference when you can quickly decide as a business owner that like this is not the couple for me because that saves everybody's time and it saves your energy and it opens up more space and opportunity for finding the clients that are perfect for you.
Yeah, and because I was doing those outreach too, I think it really did make a difference, because that outreach with the vendors, I've befriended so many signage makers around the area, and be like, hey, send them a quick message. It's like, are you available for this date?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
same with me. And it's I love the idea of community over competition, because there's room and space for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, and never underestimate the like value of those connections because so many referral jobs come through that network. And I have something similar here in Denver too. and there's so many jobs just being passed around because we kind of know amongst our community who's going to be the best person for this job. So yeah, love that. Okay, so it sounds like you're in a really good place with your business right now, and I heard you say you really love it. I'm curious, hearing your vision that you described in the beginning to your fiance, which by the way, kudos to him for asking you that question of like, what would it look like if you succeed? Because I think a lot of times we fixate on what happens if I fail, and we don't flip that question around to say like, what does it look like if I succeed? And what if I let myself imagine what that really could look like? And so I'm so glad that he asked you that. Mm. But I'm curious, like, are you open to sharing like where you go from here? Are you happy with where you are right now? Are you imagining expanding more? Like you talked about having a team, a warehouse, all these things. What's the next big step for Kristine?
Oh, man. I know this year I've actually minimized my couples, and that part of that is because of my wedding. Now, thinking about 2027 and the following years forward, I do want that consistency. And the next step would probably be leaving my full-time 9 to 5 job and taking this full
Oh my
time.
gosh, so exciting. Well, you've spoken it into existence on this podcast now. And we're putting it into the universe.
Yes, that's exactly why I'm saying it out loud. And I
Yes.
just a couple days ago, someone had talked to me about my career in my 9 to 5, and as that person was talking to me about it, I looked at him and I was like, this sounds great, but I don't know if this is where I want to be at the point in my life, because I just kept thinking about my business at the back of my head.
Hmm.
My plan was to make my business full time. And so when this career opportunity was presented to me, I already knew that it wasn't what I wanted. Now I knew that. If you were to ask
Yeah.
Chris 5 years ago, I'm like, yes, yes, take me up the corporate ladder.
Right, right. But I love that we give ourselves the space to change our minds and to decide something different for what we need in whatever season we're in. And that's sometimes why I don't really like making 5-year plans or even 1-year plans because like what's the point when I'm probably going to change my mind by then anyway?
Oh, yes, I am constantly changing my mind every single day. But the interesting thing about my plans for my business is that this is something that I don't think I'd ever change my mind on, because I truly now want it to be full time. So I'm working. That's the next big step.
So exciting. Oh my gosh. Yay. Yeah, and I think being an entrepreneur allows you within the space of entrepreneurship to be changing. Like, I just passed 7 years in business, and my business doesn't look like when I first started either. I'm much more in the coaching education space now, which I love. And I think part of the reason why this is the longest job I've ever had is because I get the freedom and the space to make those decisions based on what I need. So I'm so excited for you. I remember when we were doing our onboarding form for the CEO partner coaching program, you had put wanting to go full time, but I think there wasn't a timeline at that point because I remember asking you that question. When we were having the conversation, the sense I got was that it felt like it was something you wanted in the future, but it felt distant. Like you didn't know how to put a time frame around it because it still felt really ambiguous. And so I'm really excited to hear that it's feeling more concrete. That's a huge one.
Yes, yes. And I, again, kudos to my fiance who's just asking me all of these hard questions that I'm asking myself, but I'm just like pushing off to the side of like, do I really, want to do this full time? But he's the one that's really the person that's encouraging me nonstop and telling me, hey, look at the big picture. Look at your goals. What is it truly that you want in your life that will make you happy? Like, this business is what truly makes me happy. When we think about our plans as like having a family, or like, when our kids are older or whatever, like, is this something that you still want to do? And I'm like, yeah, because my brain is very creative and I want to keep funneling into that creativity. And you never know, I might not do large scale signage down the line. It might be completely different. I might end up doing something more on the education piece, and I'm open to that. And that's the fun thing about entrepreneurship, that you never really know.
Yeah.
And for some people it could be intimidating. I have to admit that there are some fears into that because it's the unknown. But when you start focusing on like the positive things that can come out of that, that gives me the energy to keep going and to just plan it out and see what happens. And it's also helpful to have someone that's supportive, not just in business, but in your personal life that really sees the ins and outs of what you're actually doing to get to that next step.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you sounds like a great partner. I'm very
Yeah.
excited. Congratulations on your wedding. So this has been just an incredible conversation, and I've loved hearing more about your journey. There were definitely some gems in there that I didn't know about from when we worked together in coaching, and so it's just been really fun to hear, especially about like the early days and why you went into a template shop in the first place and all of that. So thank you for taking the time to share all of this with us, especially since you have three full-time roles right now. So, to wrap up our conversation, I'm curious, as someone who had never been in a coaching program prior to joining my CEO partner coaching program, do you have any insight or advice for somebody who might be considering joining a coaching program or just like curious about it for helping to grow their business?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is investing in your skill and investing in your business will always be worth it. And we talked about like those tiny little steps to get to the big step that I wanted. If you're kind of stuck in that what's next phase, having someone there and keeping you accountable, guiding you through the process will always be worth it. So take the leap, just do it because I can't emphasize how much worth it is to have a partner. And I mentioned this earlier about how being a business owner could be a little lonely and you could be into
Mhm.
your head so many times in a day that sometimes you're just like stuck in this what's next, like you're in paralysis mode. But it really does help to talk things out with someone, and I think that's what the coaching program has really helped me get to where I am right now. The accountability piece of it, the feeling of clarity that these tiny steps is going to get to where I actually want in my business. What really helped me during the coaching program was that you met me where I was in my business. I was looking for something very niche, and you guided me through the entire process. And that's something very unique to me. And that could be very helpful for others that could be in the same boat. I don't think I'd be where I am in my business if you didn't help me break down the specific questions that I had to get to the next step.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Christine. I love that. What I personally love as a coach and having working with coaching clients is that we work on the big picture, the strategy, the vision, and we also really dive into the nitty gritty and being able to like work on all those levels and then like the mindset in between. I feel like the mindset that it really takes to sometimes step out of your comfort zone, like we were talking about, or push yourself to do that follow through. Like that's where I feel like a lot of the magic happens too, because when we are able to talk through some of the mindset blocks, that's not going to impact you only in the program, but also like far beyond as a business owner too. And to really get to the point where you feel really confident about yourself as somebody who leads the business, who makes decisions and things like that. So that's kind of what I hope everybody leaves with coming out of my coaching program. So but yes, if you're listening to this episode and you are curious about coaching, I would love to have a conversation with you. You can find me online at monstera.gold and shoot me a DM, and I can tell you about my CEO partner coaching program or my Ascent coaching program. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us on our show. I'm so excited to share your story with everyone. It's so inspirational to see how you have shifted and grown through this journey. And I'm so excited for what comes next for you and Kristine P. Calligraphy.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really great, like, reflective time too, just like remembering what I've done in my past business, and it's been a great conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow Calligraphy Biz Corner wherever you're listening and leave a quick rating. It allows me to reach and help more calligraphers and creatives like you. I'd love to hear your feedback, episode ideas, or just how you're liking the show. Drop me a DM at Calligraphy Biz Corner. And until next time, keep the ink flowing and the dreams growing.